Who the hell can wait till morning? Talk now at latenightsportsradio.com.
One, two.
He's not compensating for anything. He just doesn't care. It's the Bob Sullivan Show on LateNightSportsRadio.com.
But as long as it's here, then we might as well shine together. Better now than never. Business before pleasure.
Thank you for joining me for another edition of the Bob Sullivan Show here on LateNightSportsRadio.com. If you'd like to call in, the call-in number is 585-633-7487. I'm joined here in hour number one by founder of NoCoastBias.com, Derek Hernandez. How you doing tonight, Derek?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Not a lot of exciting things going on in Omaha. However, there was some excitement at the zoo where the gorilla ran into the glass enclosure and cracked the outside glass. Is that the most exciting thing to happen in Omaha in 2015?
It's crazy. I can't even think of something witty to actually reply to that because it has been the most exciting thing that happened in Omaha in 2015. I don't know, seeing that video for the first time, it looks like it was part of the new Planet of the Apes movie. It was crazy.
Yeah, whenever I go to the zoo, it says don't stare at any of the primates in the eyes or try to provoke them. Every time I go, I try to provoke them and try to get that reaction, and it takes just a little kid pounding on her chest to provoke a gorilla. I feel like now I know what I need to do to get that type of reaction in the primate exhibit. So I think I'm going to go that route whenever I visit Henry Dorley from now on.
Well, let me know. I live right down the road from the zoo, and I feel like I've been gypped this entire time trying to provoke the animals as well, and this girl is so lucky.
Yeah, she made the gorilla internet famous now, and Omaha internet famous now. And by the way, speaking of the zoo, is there a more overrated and more seen thing than the Desert Dome? It's really not that exciting.
Yeah, zoos. I go to the zoo. It's something you have to do at one of the better ones in the United States, but I don't get too enthused about it. I think I just go to the zoo just because it's something to do with the old lady. But you're right. I totally agree with you. It's just a lot of dirt and animals that are kind of similar to each other lined up. That's kind of a bit of my experience with it.
They're all sleeping too. None of them are doing anything. I get that they're all in a 5x5 room, but they don't do anything. They're all sleeping, and it's really disappointing. The Kingdom of the Night is pretty cool down in the basement, but other than that, it's for how much money they put into building that thing, it's a pretty disappointing exhibit.
I can see that.
Well, on to the NBA. We got, first round's gotten started here, playoffs getting going. Golden State, pretty much managed that game pretty well. They had big leads at times. It got close at the end. Anthony Davis played well. Right now, what do you see from Golden State in this series? The more I watch them, the more I, think they can actually win the West, and I'm starting to buy into that. Just the way I've watched the other teams in the West, and I think we're down to 3 teams in the West, whereas most of the season people were there's about 7 teams that could win the West. I think we're down to 3, and it's Golden State, Memphis, and San Antonio, in my opinion. Do you agree with that, and what did you like from Golden State?
I think the 3 teams you mentioned are probably right on the money. Not a believer in the Rockets at all. I actually picked them losing in 6 to the Mavericks. Clippers, Chris Paul doesn't get out of the second round, so you can pretty much disqualify them. Trailblazers are a mess right now. I love the way Memphis plays. It's kind of that old school style. And if they weren't so banged up, I would have put some money on them actually to take the West this season. But the Warriors are hitting on all cylinders right now. They just have that confidence in them. I think a lot of people like to talk about their offense because it's amazing to watch. It's just fun to watch, even if you don't like Golden State. But people forget they're a really good defensive team. I think they were in top 2 defensive in statistics this year, and I think they when they play at home, I don't think anybody's going to beat them. They just play loose. They play fast. There's no pressure on them, which you think they'd have right now, winning so many games, 67 games, and being a prohibitive favorite. They just play loose at home. I'd like to see what happens when they play on the road. It probably won't happen this series against the Pelicans because I think they've got too much firepower for the Pelicans. But if they get into a series with, Memphis, their group's pretty experienced. They've been through the battles together. Obviously, San Antonio, I'd like to see what happens there. But, from what I saw from the Warriors, I think they went on cruise control in the fourth quarter. The Brow got comfortable, went off for 20 in the fourth quarter. But I think they're going to have this series, I'd say maybe it's 5 games. I don't think the Brow's going to let the Pelicans just get swept right out of the building. But I agree with your assessment in terms of the top 3 teams that have a realistic shot in the West.
With Golden State, it is amazing to me how much of a difference Andrew Bogut makes for this team. I mean, the guy drafted number 1 overall, not your prototypical number 1 overall pick down the, where he's at in his career. He's kind of a do all the dirty work, the type of guy that you would like to get late in the first round. And, they made the traded away at Monte Ellis to get him. And ever since he's been with Golden State, it's always been, imagine this team if they had a healthy Bogut. This team needs a healthy Bogut and they'd be fine. They finally have a healthy Bogut. They get a legitimate coach in Steve Kerr, and, things turn around, they kick things into high gear. This is a completely different team this year, 67 wins. And defensively, you can afford to have Thompson or Curry make a couple mistakes defensively, and Bogut will bail them out. Do you see any other team, do you see them having any weaknesses right now that a team like San Antonio could exploit?
The first thing people would probably mention is experience, but most of this group went toe-to-toe with San Antonio a couple years ago, and they could have easily won, the first 2 games of that series. That was the year where Denver, my Nuggets, were the 3 seed, and Gallo got hurt. Warriors had the benefit of having the mole, who was Iguodala at the time, on the team, and Warriors won that series, went on to play San Antonio, and they played with them toe-to-toe. So I don't think the experience factor, if they ended up playing them, would be that big of a deal, but I think for them it's just durability, because like you mentioned, Bogut usually was hurt. Iguodala has a lot of mileage on him as well. Curry's ankles were a problem for the first part of his career. I think that's pretty much the only thing that could derail them, because I think Steve Kerr is savvy enough. Yeah, I know he's never coached before the season, but he's played championship basketball. He's surrounded himself with the right people. So I don't think he's going to get outclassed by Popovich. But I think the only thing that could derail them against the Spurs is just injuries, really, because they both rely on a lot of the outside shooting. So I don't think that narrative is in play there. So I think that's the only thing that could stop them.
It's not with San Antonio. I don't like them. I don't hate them, but I don't. I'm really kind of neutral on them. But the thing that's nice about San Antonio is you don't have to hear about their fans. Like if there's an organization that does things right, or like Nebraska in the 90s, it was like, oh, the fans, they're all really smart. Cardinal fans are all really smart. Steeler fans are all really smart. They get it. You don't hear that about San Antonio fans, which is kind of refreshing, because, I guess my guess is 1 in every 5 fans knows what they're talking about for every organization, and it's probably lower for, you go to Creighton fans and whatnot. But you look around, San Antonio doesn't bother me as far as their fans go, because you don't have to hear about them all the time, how smart they are. Isn't that refreshing from a well-run organization?
It is, actually. I mean, they usually get compared to the New England Patriots in terms of, because I think they rose to prominence around the same time here in their most recent runs. They won the same amount of championships around that run. And obviously New England fans can be a little abrasive. So, but the Spurs, though, it's weird, because I interact with some Spurs fans on Twitter, and it's not the normal, I guess, when the Heat were winning, it was really obnoxious. San Antonio fans, though, it's just, well, we have a process. We've done this for long enough that we're not going to get too high. We're not going to get too low. I mean, there's a part of me that wants to just see them, how they would react if they lost a few seasons in a row, because it's easy to be calm when you know you're going to be winning. It's easy to do that. But I think it's very interesting. It is refreshing. I mean, NBA fans in general, I think out of the major sports, are probably the most laid back and most cordial in terms of having actual conversation. It's kind of strange because, NFL, MLB, it's like if you like a particular team, you hate everybody else, you hate all the other players, all the other fan bases. But in the NBA, we can appreciate greatness. We're not all Warriors fans, but we can appreciate what Steph Curry and company are doing, or Anthony Davis. We just want to see them succeed, and it's more of a fan of the game in the NBA. So it doesn't shock me based on the way that organizations run, but NBA fans in general are just very great to deal with.
Yeah, it's definitely refreshing. And the other thing with the Spurs, with I guess it's with Kerr, even with Warrior fans, they obviously in California they only show up when something's good, like whether it's Golden State, Sacramento, Clippers, other than the Lakers. Whenever their team's good, they'll show up. But they're loud. They have the best. It's amazing to me, the California teams, they have the best atmospheres come playoff time if their teams are good. Like the Kings crowds in the early 2000s were awesome. When the Warriors had Baron Davis in that 8th seed against Dallas, they weren't a great team, but they had great crowds in the playoffs. And then even the Clippers, I think their crowds are pretty good come playoff time too. The West by far has the best fans, in my opinion, best playoff atmosphere games. The East, it's kind of, we're here. But every fan in the West seems like they're into every single game, every single moment.
Oh, yeah, I can definitely see that. And, the Warriors, it's you mentioned that Baron Davis team, but they usually show up. It's just that Golden State's kind of sucked for a while, and nobody gets to see that fan base. And it'll be interesting because I believe they're moving the team to San Francisco or a little bit outside of Oakland. It'll be interesting to see how that affects that. But in terms of the Eastern Conference side, I mean, Boston, I think they've just had so much success with all of their sports teams that they're not as rowdy as the old Boston Garden crowd. Chicago, they show up and they're very into the game, but it's not rowdy like you mentioned. And San Antonio actually got a pretty decent crowd too. And I don't know if it's just a laid back atmosphere. Maybe it's warmer on that side of the country at this time, so everybody's just ready to unwind, and it's still kind of cold on the East Coast. I don't know, but there is somewhat of a difference there, and I just think even the style of play though might play a part in that, because the Western Conference teams are a little more wide open. OKC is a little more wide open. They're also in a college football state, so their crowd's going to be a little bit different as well. And I guess bringing that point up, the East Coast doesn't really have a lot of good college football teams, really. No. And I think that crowd is still evident in the West. You have all the Texas teams, OKC, who I mentioned. So you have that kind of instilled in you in the West, and I think that might cause some fans to be a little more excited or know how to be rowdy. But there is a definite difference, though.
Yeah, it might be. Yeah, those the cities in the West Coast are more likely to, hey, let's go tailgate. Whereas in like New York, Boston, Chicago, you have to, pay for parking. Well, you're gonna have to pay for parking anyway, but you have to go to like a parking garage or something, 5 miles away and walk and stuff like that. More of these crowds like, Memphis, I'm assuming they're having tailgates outside, with some good barbecue and whatnot, and those Texas cities as well. I think there's better, like you said, it's more of a college football mentality of, okay, let's go have a tailgate, get really drunk, and then go cheer on our team. Whereas, on the East Coast, they're a little more civilized, more likely to, or a little more pissed off that they have to walk so far, or how much they have to pay for parking, that they're a little less into the game at times.
Yeah, it's almost like more work. It's like a business trip. Like, okay, we have to be here. This is what we do. There's definitely, it seems like that. Now, obviously, I haven't been to every NBA stadium, but for the places I've been, it does kind of seem like that.
Well, looking at Atlanta. They took care of Brooklyn tonight. They, at times Brooklyn got it close, but you never really felt like they were going to take over. With Brooklyn, is there a more disappointing backcourt? We talk about the backcourt with Klay Thompson and Steph Curry, but you look at, two former All-Stars, two guys that at times were top 10 players in the league, and Deron Williams and Joe Johnson. Is there a more disappointing franchise and disappointing backcourt than Joe Johnson and Deron Williams right now?
I don't think so, because they have at their peak years. Deron Williams was in the conversation with Chris Paul in terms of best point guard a few years back. Joe Johnson, everybody makes fun of his contract, or they bring that up, but I mean, it wasn't his fault he got paid. You take the money, but I think, and he was still a good player. He's still a good shooter. He's very clutch. But it's just, I think just being for that franchise right now, there was so much hope when Jay-Z was involved, and Prokhorov was promising a championship in 5 years, and they traded, 10 years worth of first-round picks for KG and Paul Pierce, and I just think right now they're at the point in their careers where this is just a job. We're going to go out there and play. I don't even think they wanted to make the playoffs, but they somehow backed into it because they do have some talent on Brooklyn, and I think they're just at their stage in their careers where they're just doing it for paychecks now. Yeah, if we make the playoffs, it's fine. But Deron Williams had a pretty steep decline like right away. I don't know what happened to him, but I think Joe Johnson in the right situation can still be pretty important to teams out west, especially with their style of play. But I don't know what happened to Deron Williams, to be honest with you.
Do you think it was, do you think Deron Williams was more so a product of Jerry Sloan?
Don't let him hear you say that. But I don't know. He had more structure there. I'll give you that. And Sloan's a genius with dealing with John Stockton all those years. But I think right now Williams has more talent and freedom around him, so you'd think he would thrive in that. I don't know if he just needed the discipline and he didn't know it. So I don't know how to answer that really.
Yeah, I don't want to say he was a product of Sloan, but it definitely feels that way, because as soon as Sloan got fired in Utah, things started to go south for Deron Williams, and he gets traded to New Jersey at the time. And, even Chris Paul, yeah, he had Tyson Chandler and David West and, Page at times, but even in the Western Conference, he was able to get that Hornets team to the playoffs year in, year out, and he was healthy. And Deron Williams in the East couldn't even get the Nets to the playoffs until really he got Joe Johnson. And, he had Brook Lopez. I felt like Deron Williams, struggled with, he couldn't lift the rest of his team up the way that Chris Paul could, and I thought that was the telling sign of those two. And Deron Williams, yeah, I don't understand what happened with him. I think he just, got complacent, got lazy, got paid, and then things kind of went south for him.
Yeah, I mean, I think his last really important moments, basketball moments, where he was on the Redeem team, I believe, and he played major minutes on that team. And I think after that, I think he thought he was made, and he didn't really he didn't see any hope in Brooklyn, and he was just playing out his contract and doing his thing. And I know Chris Paul gets a lot of the crap for getting on his teammates, but he does get the most of a lot of his teams. Now, I'm not saying he's maximizing his Clippers talent, but when Austin Rivers is one of their key guys coming off the bench and Hedo Turkoglu's still playing, it's not all on him right now. But he's, like you said, he's proven that stuff. And Deron Williams had that one Western Conference Finals run. But after that, it's all been downhill since the Olympics, I think.
Yeah. Looking at the Bulls, yes, they're playing the Milwaukee Bucks. They looked good. Rose looked good. Butler looked good. Do we just have to, with the Bulls, do you think they can give the Cavs a series? Obviously, I think they can give them a series, but do you think they can beat them? And do you think it's just cross your fingers and hope nobody else gets injured? What do you think the key is for the Bulls right now?
I mean, it's got to be injuries. I mean, that's what's derailed them the last few years. And they haven't really played with this full stack right now that they have right now in the playoffs. And it'll be interesting to see how that works. And if Rose, he's not Rose, obviously, he's not the same Rose he used to be, but if he can just be efficient and not take too many threes, he gives them enough scoring punch from that point guard position that'll help them immensely. But they're bigs. I know the Cavs have improved with Mozgov, but he cannot handle Gasol and Noah. And if Noah's right by the time they play Cleveland, I think Cleveland's going to be in serious trouble there. I mean, Jimmy Butler can give LeBron a little bit of a challenge. I don't know if the Bulls really have anything for Kyrie Irving, but I think it's closer than the experts think. I think I'd give the Cleveland Cavaliers maybe a 60% chance of winning that series. I think it's going to be close. The Bulls absolutely hate the Cavaliers. They're going to be motivated. This might be Coach Tibbs' last hurrah with Chicago, so they're going to put it all on the table. I think they might be able to give they're definitely going to give Cleveland some problems if they play.
Do you think they should put Butler on Kyrie and let LeBron just roam and just try to force LeBron to just do everything, scoring, everything like that? Or do you think they should put Butler on LeBron and, allow Kyrie to, run free? Because I think if you put Butler on Kyrie, you could take him out of the series for the most part, as best you can. But I don't know. I think if you have Butler on LeBron, I think it kind of opens up Kyrie to do a little bit more.
It's I think you asked me this question a couple of years ago with LeBron, like peak LeBron. It would have been no-brainer to make Kyrie Irving beat you because he's inexperienced. You don't know how he's going to react in that situation if he's going to burn himself out. But it could be a thing where how much does LeBron have in the tank? He took that little 2-week break off during the middle of the year. How is he going to hold up here at the end of the year? He's put a lot of mileage on. He's played a ton of games, Olympics. He's made the finals like the last decade, basically. He's played basketball nonstop. And if I were Coach Thibodeau, I would, I'd let Kyrie Irving beat me because LeBron can do so many other things. But it wouldn't be crazy to think, okay, let's see how LeBron holds up if he can do what he normally does against me. Because Chicago will be very physical with him, and especially Joakim Noah, who'd love to deck him coming down the lane. But I think it's if it were me, I'd let Kyrie see what he can do, and if he's going off, you might have to switch then at the end. But just based on experience alone, I'd like to see what Kyrie could do against me.
If you're Thibodeau, if Kyrie drives down the lane, do you give free reign with the way Noah's playing? Or are you like, hey, if you get a shot, take it on Kyrie, just to kind of, because Kyrie's not going to see anything physical in this Boston series. It's just not going to happen. Do you send a message to Kyrie early in that series with Joakim Noah, just risk, like, okay, maybe Noah gets suspended for a game, so what? Just to, get him off his game?
I know it'd probably go through Noah's head. Maybe risk a Taj Gibson or something instead. And then the Cavs aren't exactly that big where if you lost Taj Gibson, you'd be hurt because I think he can roll out. Mirotic is tall enough, and Cavs like to spread you out anyways. So I think you risk a Taj Gibson versus a Joakim Noah, even though Noah would probably volunteer a million times over to do it, especially for LeBron. But I don't mind sending those messages right now. I think it will work for the bad boys, and the Bulls are going to have to bully the Cavaliers to get past them in that series. So do what you can, I guess.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll be right back here with Derek Hernandez of No Coast Bias to talk some more NBA right here on LateNightSportsRadio.com.
Tells me sign. What happens next for us then? One day you will find that I'm doing fine without you. It's a good life. It's a good life. It's a good life. Did you take more than you give? Running around trying to find what's left of me. Running around trying to find what's left of me. I'm doing just fine here, though I am broken still. I find a way to climb up out of the snow. I'm taking bets on what happens next for us. And one day you will find that I'm doing fine without you. 'Cause you take more than you give. I'm running around trying to find my pieces. You take more than you give. Running around trying to find what's left of you. Take more than you give. I'm running around trying to find my pieces. You take more than you give. Running around trying to find what's left of me. Running around trying to find what's left of me. Running around trying to find what's left of me. I'm taking bets on what happens next for us. 'Cause you take more than you give. I'm running around trying to find my pieces. You take more than you give. Running around trying to find what's left of me. 'Cause you take more than you give. I'm running around trying to find my pieces. You take more than you give. Running around trying to find what's left of you. Take more than you give. I'm running around trying to find my pieces. You take more than you give. Running around trying to find what's left of me.
Baby, you're a mystery. Tell me what's a girl gotta do? Looking at the history doesn't seem to give any clue. Just when I think I understand it all, you seem to unravel some more. Ooh, I never known nobody like you. Now I know you're down and neighbor. Yeah, you keep me guessing on confessing now, well, baby, it's true. I never know nobody like you. Baby, you're unable. Baby, you're a riddle. I'm caught up in the middle of you. I'm trying to think bigger, but I can't seem to figure it through. I wanna make it better, but now I'm scared of looking a fool. Oh, baby, no, I've never been very good at playing it cool. Just when I think I understand it all, I find I know nothing at all. I never know
Who the hell can wait till morning? Talk now at latenightsportsradio.com.
There's a reason his initials are BS. It's the Bob Sullivan Show on LateNightSportsRadio.com.
Welcome back to the Bob Sullivan Show here on LateNightSportsRadio.com. If you'd like to call in, the call-in number is 585-633-7487. I am joined here by Derek Hernandez of NoCoastBias.com. Derek, with the way the Grizzlies played tonight against Portland, Portland, I think they would be, obviously they'd be in way better shape if they had Wes Matthews. I'd actually think they'd probably have a shot at winning the West, but without, that extra threat and having C.J. McCollum have to start, not a recipe for success for them. Grizzlies, do you think they take care of business pretty quickly in this series, or do you think, with the way they play, they'll, if they, have offensive struggles in Portland, they'll probably lose a game? What do you think? 4, 5, 6 games here?
I'd probably say Grizzlies, and before today's game, I think they picked the Grizzlies in 6, or no, actually had them in 7. But the way the Trailblazers look today, they just look disinterested. When the Grizzlies put up, I think they had 58 points at the half. They're not going to lose at that point. They play too good a defense to do that. So as of right now, I think it's going to be Grizzlies in 6. I don't think the Blazers are going to play this terrible the rest of the way, but I just don't think they have enough right now. They're too banged up. Who knows if Aflalo's going to come back this series or not. The Grizzlies have been together for a while. I think they've got some mileage on them. I think there's a sense of urgency. They have to get this done this year. I just think they'll take care of business. And like we talked about earlier in the show, I'm just a big fan of the way they play, and I think they're one of the favorites in the West. So I don't think the Blazers have a chance, especially after tonight.
Well, the Grizzlies, they're a tad banged up. Conley's not 100%. Allen's not 100%. Jeff Green, he looked good today. Bano Udrih played really well tonight. And then, really, with Gasol, it's not like, I wouldn't call them, they're not the most talented team in the league, obviously, but they play, and it wouldn't be unique in the 90s, but it's unique for today. Like, nobody plays, just basically muddy it up. And they're the only team that I really see that can, with the way they play, can make every team uncomfortable in the league. And I don't think, Golden State, they're deep. They can make things uncomfortable. But Grizzlies, I think they're the one team where their style can control everything. And that's the only team that because of their style, that they can win the West. That's the only team, in my opinion, with the way they play.
Well, it's, like they say in boxing, styles make fights. And if it was the Warriors versus the Grizzlies, it'd be exactly that. And, we were talking about Andrew Bogut earlier. He'd become that much more important if they play the Grizzlies in the next round. Because if he went down, the Warriors would be in a world of hurt. Draymond Green can hold his own for a little while, but after that, they're pretty thin. In the front court. And I don't know, they'd have some trouble there with that matchup.
Well, and imagine, them having to play David Lee against that front line. That's not gonna end well for the Warriors. And the other thing with the big guys for the Grizzlies, they play good defense, but it's not like, it's like a controlled physical. It's not, Lambeer, Mahorn, or anything like that. And they don't put anybody on the ground, but they're physical enough to make it uncomfortable, but they're not. They don't play bully ball, in my opinion. It's weird.
Yeah, it is. Randolph is probably your closest to bully ball in that squad. Marc Gasol's he's kind of a point center, the way they use him, and Kosta Koufos, traditional big guy basically. But Randolph, he still has a little bit of that in him, and I think if he went head to head with Draymond Green, who's notorious for talking, he could turn into bully ball for a small segment of the game. But in a general sense, they are very skilled. I think that they're great grind style, the skill of their big man kind of gets lost in all of that.
Of a team of the past, who does Memphis remind you of?
Ooh, team of the past. I think off the top of my head, it's probably the old Jailblazers team that Zach Randolph was on before. I think he had Arvidas himself, and then a lot of complimentary players on that team. Brian Grant, I think, was on that team. I can't remember if Damon Stoudemire was the point guard or not on that team, but if he was, it's kind of Conley-esque. So I don't know if that's how far back you wanted me to look, but right off the top of my head, that's the first team I can think of.
I think they're a tad like that Kings team, not as deep as the Kings were, but with I guess Weber wasn't as physical as Randolph is, or kind of a loose cannon that Randolph can be at times. But Vlade and Marcus Gasol are pretty similar in the way they play. The point center type of thing. I think Kufis is, kind of a Brad Miller type off the bench. I'd say that type. Actually, Scot Pollard more like. I'd say that's what I was thinking of. But yeah, one of those two teams is pretty comparable to this Memphis team.
I never thought we'd be talking about Scot Pollard tonight, but that's awesome.
He had great hair, and he also got in trouble for that. Hey kids, do drugs. You remember that when he was with the Pacers? They panned over to him on the bench when he was injured.
Yeah.
Camera caught him saying, "Hey kids, do drugs." One of his best.
Oh yeah. Pollard, man, we should get him on the show one time.
Yeah, that would be a wild interview. I think that's the one thing that I've noticed on different people's podcasts. Like when you get a role player or something like that, it's always a better interview than a star player like a Bird, Magic, whatever, because they have so many more stories to tell about. Like listening to Horace Grant on the Simmons podcast, telling stories about Kobe, Penny, Shaq, Jordan. Those are the type of guys you want to listen to because they're willing to tell their stories because they don't really care about hurting other people's feelings.
Oh, definitely, and they have time, and they have. They're not really worried about their legacies or anything. So, let it rip.
Yep. Looking at the Wizards-Raptors series, going into the season, I was thinking, if we got a Raptors-Wizards series in the playoffs, I'd be excited for it. The way it went down the rest of the season, the Wizards and Raptors, neither one had a winning record after the All-Star break. Kind of sputtered into the playoffs, 4-5 seed. I'm not excited for this series. And, the first game, it was a good game, went overtime. But are you kind of disappointed by this series, the way it's, the way they played down the stretch? It's not going to be very exciting, in my opinion. James Johnson didn't play in the first game. I don't know why. And this series is going to be kind of a downer, in my opinion.
Yeah, other than the Gravis Vasquez shimmy, that might have been the most brutal playoff game that went into overtime I've ever watched. I mean, if you just said playoff overtime game, you'd be excited about it. But that was brutal. I mean, you have a guy like Bradley Beal with a sweet stroke going, 4 for 25 or something, and the Wizards forgetting how to play offensive basketball and giving it to Paul Pierce. And then the Raptors, I don't think they even scored in overtime. It was a brutal, brutal game. And if you can make that Toronto crowd be silent for a good portion of the game, because they're a great crowd, you did something wrong. And that was a brutal game to watch.
It's sad when the two things that in the series that are going to be the most exciting are the GM or whatever he is for Toronto, making stupid comments or hoping that Paul Pierce has some meltdown in a post-game press conference. Those are the only two things I'm really looking forward to from this series, and that's sad because this should have been, at the beginning of the season, this sounded like a great playoff matchup, and it's not going to be watchable.
Oh yeah, and you forgot about Randy Whitman and his antics on the sideline as well.
Yeah. Is there a worse coach in the playoffs right now?
I'm not a fan of Monty Williams, but he's not as bad as Randy Newman. I think you're right. Randy Newman's by far now the worst coach in the playoffs.
Well, and Scott, Whitman got bailed out by the Thunder not making the playoffs as well.
Oh yeah. Do you think Scott Brooks is going to be back next year?
The fact that the rumor has started doesn't look good, because it's always been, as soon as the season ended for them, it was, oh yeah, Scott Brooks is going to be back. That's just the way it's going to be. The fact that there's even a rumor does not bode well for Scott Brooks, because usually that's a franchise, the way they've run things so far, it's just he's back and that's it. For there even to be a glimmer that might happen, I don't think looks good for Scott Brooks. I think he winds up moving on, and I think they hire Kevin Ollie.
Ooh, I can see that working. I haven't heard that. I heard Billy Donovan, but Kevin Ollie might actually be a better fit, I think. The scary thing for me is I'm a Nuggets fan, and the names that have been thrown out for their coaching position have been D'Antoni and Scott Brooks if he gets let go. I guess we just want to be terrible forever. I don't know what we're trying to do, but
D'Antoni would be interesting, because Ty Lawson and Fareed do kind of fit the mold of a D'Antoni backcourt, front court guy. Mm-hmm. So I would be interested in that. And if Gallo could get healthy, God knows if that happens. I kind of like that mix with D'Antoni. You're not going to win any championships that way, but I do like that mix. Scott Brooks, I don't think that's a good fit for anybody in that organization. Billy Donovan, by the way, I'm not 100% believer in him being an NBA head coach. Are you?
A few years ago, I would have, when he had that Noah Brewer team. It was a very NBA style type of team. But I just think there's something in his head. He's so indecisive that I think you're taking a big risk with him. And I think he just needs to be the main guy, and he has a strong personality. And I just don't know that would work with most of the franchises in the NBA.
With this, on to playoff teams. Clippers, Spurs, just getting underway here. Spurs, Clips. Is this the best coaching matchup in the first round? Doc Rivers and Gregg Popovich?
I have to say, a few years back, I know it's crazy to think about now, but when the Celtics had their big three and they were making the run, I put Doc Rivers on the same level as Gregg Popovich. Now it's come out that maybe Rivers isn't so great. It could just be more of him meddling with the GM position. Like, he needs a strong GM so he can concentrate on coaching rather than just complaining all game. But this is a battle of battle-tested coaches. I still think Pop's going to run circles around Rivers. I just don't think Rivers has the personnel now to do what he wants defensively and offensively. He doesn't have a lot of that experience or depth to do a lot of the things he wants to do. But this is going to be one hell of a series. And if it goes 7, I think Bill Simmons called it the greatest sporting night in history of mankind, because the Game 7 would be the same night as that Mayweather-Pacquiao fight.
Yeah, that and isn't the Kentucky Derby that day too?
Oh yeah, is it? No, let's see, May 6th, Kentucky Derby. If so, that's just outrageous at that point.
Well, it's crazy to think also that horse racing and boxing are going to both be relevant on the same day, 2015.
Oh yeah, it is. May 1st, May 2nd, Kentucky Derby.
Yeah, with boxing and horse racing, horse racing has gotten stale mainly because there's no Triple Crown. There hasn't been a Triple Crown winner in, almost like 40 years now. And then boxing, it's just, there's no governing body, so it's, and UFC's taken over. What do you think those two sports to have one day? It's too bad it couldn't be 2 separate days on the same weekend, but for one day, for both of those to be the premier events, that's going to be awesome. It's going to be the last time ever, too.
Yeah, definitely. It's going to be an eventful day. I mean, I don't watch a lot of horse racing, but just the spectacle itself to kind of get to take that in. And, man, I totally forgot about that event going on that day.
With Mayweather Pacquiao, what do you see happening in that fight?
The cynic in me says if he goes to the scorecard, Pacquiao will win because they want to make a trilogy and make trillions of dollars off of these two fighters. But and I'm a Pacquiao fan, by the way. But I think what's going to happen is Pacquiao is going to try to be aggressive. Mayweather is going to avoid him for most of the fight, like he does. And I think at the end of the fight, Mayweather is just going to outclass Pacquiao at the very end. It pains me to say that. I just don't. If this was like maybe 2-3 years ago, Pacquiao, yeah, but he's not that same fighter anymore. He doesn't pack that same wallop in his power punches anymore.
This feels kind of like when Jordan faced off against Magic in the finals. Like it happened a couple years too late. And, Pacquiao, since Pacquiao and Mayweather, they were at the peaks when they were originally going to plan on fighting. They couldn't get together on blood testing, all that crap. And then they decide, they put it on the shelf for 5 years. I feel like it's kind of like Magic versus Jordan in the finals. Like the moment is past, although there's a lot of money in it. I'm just not as excited for it as I thought I would be once we got it. Because, Mayweather's just kind of going through the motions at this point in his career. Pacquiao has lost, to Timothy Bradley. It doesn't have the juice to me that it would have 5 years ago. But if it's a great fight, I think number 2, I will be even more jacked up for if they have a second fight. In my opinion, that's the one I'm looking forward to more than this one. If that makes sense.
I think this is going to be an unmatched spectacle. I think everything surrounding the fight, the pregame where Pacquiao's going to be singing his own song, Mayweather walking out with Bieber, and whoever else is going to bring out the crowd. It's just there's going to be such a buzz. But I think everything besides that buzz, it might be. I think we might be in for a letdown here in terms of the actual fight. But I think it's going to be an unmatched circus, kind of like those Holyfield Tyson days or whenever the fan man came in the ring. It's going to be that wild, and I'd give anything to be in Vegas during that fight.
Do you think with the way, how boxing, when they put on, this is the only premier fight other than if we got a Klitschko versus Klitschko fight, which is never going to happen. But this is the premier fight. It's going to walk, numbers wise, it's going to, walk circles around UFC. UFC's making more money because they're, they have, the title fights, once a month, and, those are all great sellers, but they don't ever outdo what this boxing match is going to do. Do you see boxing getting fixed at any point, or do you think it's just done?
See, I don't think it's as good as it could be. Obviously, I mean, if they had one governing body, if they had a quote unquote Vince McMahon running the whole thing, it'd be awesome. But UFC, I think, is getting a little oversaturated. I think they've had some issues with their fights where they can't fill the card sometimes, and they put on some underwhelming fights. But I think UFC is going to get to a tipping point where they went too far, kind of where the NFL is going, where how much is too much football at that point. But I think boxing is salvageable. I mean, there's some good young fighters. It's the lightweights. There's never going to be. I think the day of the heavyweight is done. I think we're never going to get to that point again. But I think they're making some leeway with some of these free matches they're putting on NBC. I think I've seen stuff on Fox Sports. So I think it's not going to be dead, but I think they're making baby steps to get the casual involved.
On a little bit of a morbid note, are you surprised that nobody has died in the ring or in the octagon? You see it like once, every once in a while in boxing. Some boxer will go, will die in the ring, or gets, his brain basically explodes. With UFC, you're taking like a knee to the forehead. You're getting jacked in the face. Are you surprised that we haven't seen any deaths in UFC yet?
I'm totally surprised. And the main reason I say that is I'm a big pro wrestling fan. I watch the Indies. I watch WWE, obviously. But there was a death 3 or 4 weeks ago in Lucha Underground. And just some guy got hit with trachea, and he choked himself to death. And that stuff happens more frequently than you'd think, and that's scripted. So I'm totally shocked at how they've avoided this in MMA. Like, you don't really hear a lot about that. I mean, you heard of some gruesome injuries, but I think we're almost due for something bad to happen. It sucks to say that, but I think the odds are it's going to happen here sometime soon. I'm interested to see what the backlash will be behind that.
Yeah, I'm curious too, because it's like everybody's willing to give out these licenses for UFC, and it's way more of a caveman sport than boxing. Like boxing, at least there's rules in boxing. There's really no rules in UFC as far as what you could do in the octagon. And even like somebody taking a knee to the nose, and you hear about guys like they're stabbing, breaking their nose, going into their brain and killing them. Yeah, it's going to take one thing like that to kill a guy, and I don't know. That's going to be tough, especially with how many people watch UFC. If something like that happens on TV, like an FX or Fox or whatever they do for UFC, or on pay-per-view, that's going to be a disaster for that sport.
Oh, yeah, and that would scar me for life. If I was watching an event and I saw that, I'm like, oh, man, I don't know if I want to watch this anymore. And I like to think I'm not that squeamish, but I don't want to see anybody dying in the ring.
No. Well, the 3 things that have had the biggest effect on me: 1, Willis McGahee's injury in the national championship against Ohio State. 2, the Kevin Ware injury.
Oh, that was brutal.
Yeah. And then 3 is obviously the Paul George one. Those are the 3 that have really, those ones put the fear of God in me. With sometimes I'll jump over something, like if there's like a, just running, jumping over like a coffee table or something. Always worried about having a Kevin Ware / Paul George injury if I land wrong on my ankle. Always thinking about that whenever I make a jump. So those 3 always put the fear of God in me, and I can't imagine if, even the boxing ones, you're surprised when the guy dies when you watch the fight. But then, like in UFC, you're surprised when a guy hasn't died from like a knee to the face, or a kick to the face, or an elbow to the face, for example. Those all look terrible.
Oh yeah, less padding, more velocity. It's a very violent sport.
Well, Derek, before I let you go, do you want to tell everybody where we can find you on Twitter, the internet's No Coast Bias, all that good stuff?
Oh yeah, check me out on I'm on Twitter. I'm pretty active on that. It's at Midwest Marauder, and that's with a Z. Some guy took the one with the S there in the Midwest. But find me there on Twitter. NoCoastBias.com is the website. We also got a Twitter account at No Coast Bias. But be sure to check us out. We cover all the sports, and you might even see your guy Bob on the site as well.
Absolutely. Well, Derek, I appreciate you coming on. Love talking to you, and we'll talk again soon, man.
Thanks. Yeah, anytime.
All right, and we will be right back here with an old interview I did with Roland Lazenby talking about his book, Michael Jordan, The Life, here on the Bob Sullivan Show on LateNightSportsRadio.com.
Maybe I could offer up an
love me, hold my heart at last. I don't really care if you need me, I should leave you fast. If I was snake, I would be so wise, never let you in. Would my life be terribly nice? Would my poison kill? I don't really care if you love me, hold my heart at last. I don't really care if you need me, I should leave you fast. I should leave you I don't really care if you love me, hold my heart at last. I don't really care if you need me, I should leave you
Who the hell can wait till morning? Talk now at latenightsportsradio.com.
Blog Talk Radio.
Thank you for joining me for another edition of the Bob Sullivan Show. Today I have on with me author Roland Lasney. How are you doing today, Roland?
I'm doing great, Bob. Doing fantastic. How about you?
I'm doing wonderful. Getting a little bit into the NBA season so far. And I'm about halfway through your book, Michael Jordan, The Life. Gotta tell you, fantastic so far.
Well, thank you. It's about as long as an NBA season.
It is. And do you think LeBron James or the players today would complain about the length of this book?
Well, I think that really depends on how much they like to read. Readers have enjoyed the book. I've bought books that are big and thick and somehow never managed to get through them sometimes. And then I'll buy other books that are big and thick, and I just read them all the way through. You just never know. If you love basketball, you at least got a fighting chance with this. Michael Jordan has a very big life, and so it ended up being a very big book. It about killed me writing it all.
What was the toughest part? The research, the writing, or the cutting down?
All of it, every phase. And every time I turn around, it's probably the toughest part was the pressure and the paranoia. With a life like Michael's that was so big, you're worried about what you leave out, what you don't get in there, how you can be representative, because you can't tell everything. And I had over 1,000 pages, and we just had to... It took us a long time to cut it, and then we had to add another 200 after we cut it, and then we had to cut another 200. It was quite a process. I literally got exhausted twice But I had tremendous fun doing the interviews and the research. That part of it's sort of always like a detective story, an investigation, and that's always fun when I do a biography like this.
Well, this isn't your first biography. You also did one on Jerry West.
I did for Ian Learn books in 2010.
What similarities did you see in doing a book about Jordan and a book about Jerry West? Was there any similarities? Because, Jerry West obviously is the logo of the NBA. Did you see any similarities in personalities between the two?
Of course, I like to write about intensely competitive people. And they both qualify there, but, it's funny, even the stories of their ancestors are similar. They both came from ancestors who worked the rivers. And the rivers back in the last century were like the highways in this country. And, it was very strong, tough, hardcore kind of guys who worked the rivers. Then again, both of them were sort of dirt farmers, sharecroppers. And again, nobody made any money sharecropping. So there was that element to it. And as you went down the list, a number of things like that in their background. Both of them had the mothers that they identified with, sort of very strong women in their own right. And then you get to the players themselves, both of them guys who were blessed with a lot of physical gifts, a lot of toughness, and who prided themselves on being able to score a lot of points and be the kind of guy that opponents could not stop.
If you're, with Michael Jordan, I mean, there's, people my age, people all over the country that have posters in their rooms, their offices, all over the place of quotes from Michael Jordan. Does Michael Jordan have posters of anybody with quotes, or does he just have quotes of himself all over his office?
Oh no, Michael, of course, built a relationship with basketball through television. First, that relationship was with David Thompson, the high-flying star from NC State when Michael was a young guy. In the days when the dunk was actually outlawed in college basketball. But David Thompson, of course, was quite an acrobatic player that later went on and had a nice NBA career with Denver Nuggets. But Michael then in high school became infatuated with Magic Johnson. In fact, he had a vanity plate on his car, Magic Mike. And he really was a guy caught up in no-look passes and being a ball distributor. And his coaches in high school, by the time he was a junior, when he had moved to the varsity, they really needed his scoring. He had a pretty young team around him. And they even went to Michael's father and said, look, this guy passes too much. And of course, you think of that today, you'll laugh. But he said, this guy passes too much. Do you think you can talk him into being a little more selfish?
It's and really, that's kind of like the, his Bulls career. I mean, he had to do everything at the beginning, and then eventually he got Pippen and Horace Grant, and was able to, and even Phil Jackson was able to kind of, manage. He was able to play his own game and allow others around him to play their own games, and it worked out for those Bulls teams. As far as Jordan goes, what do you think the toughest part for him? What do you think the tougher transition was for him? High school into college into the pros.
Well, he was so young, and Dean Smith was such a god. But he did have something of a difficult transition. Michael was a great listener, and he was a very willing participant. he was given a lot of room to display all of his athleticism in high school. He had a great coach. It was in high school he was coached by African Americans, and they tended to understand his athleticism. And then he went to the University of North Carolina, and he had a very rigid, a very tightly controlled system. And it went out of its way to make sure that the system was paramount. And the pro coaches back in the 70s and 80s often fussed that Dean Smith's system was so rigid, they really couldn't tell how athletic University of North Carolina players were, because it was all about the system. Anthony Teachy, who played against Michael in high school and saw all of his athleticism, and then went to Wake Forest and played against Michael at North Carolina, said one of the things that struck him was no one gave Michael credit for having the character to simply just stuff all of his athleticism, his entire high-flying game, all those things he could do, just to stuff it away for 3 years, to play in Dean Smith's very rigid system. And, of course, Michael did that. Then he played in the Olympics for Bobby Knight, who also had, he let Michael out of his cage a little bit. But then Michael came to the Chicago Bulls, which was, at the time, just a miserable franchise about to go under, literally. But he had Kevin Lockery as a coach. And Kevin Lockery had won 2 ABA titles coaching Dr. J. And Kevin Lockery had a fine NBA career. He'd been a scorer and a really competent NBA player. And Kevin Lockery turned to Michael and said, "Son, I'm going to roll the ball out here, and you're going to explore your game." And Kevin Lockery let him out of jail. And Michael, of course, to this day remains great friends with Kevin Lockery, and probably would have made great progress under Kevin Lockery. But the Bulls, of course, were bought virtually in a fire sale by Jerry Reinsdorf, who brought in Jerry Krause. And Jerry Krause and Kevin Lockery were not close. They had both worked for the Baltimore Bullets. So Krause immediately fired Kevin Lockery at the end of Michael's rookie season. Now talk a little bit here, but there's one final irony to all this I'd like to point out. Jerry Krause, from an early time, had long admired this goofy NBA guy named Phil Jackson, who had played for the Knicks. Krause had scouted him as a player at the University of North Dakota and wanted to draft him for the Baltimore Bullets. But Red Holtzman drafted Phil instead. And Jerry Krause wanted to make Phil Jackson his coach. And he wanted to bring him in as an assistant. He had trouble with a series of coaches to make Phil part of the coaching staff. Well, the irony of all this is Kevin Lockery and Phil Jackson were old friends who had coached together with the New Jersey Nets. And the Bulls and Michael and Jerry Krause went through all this stuff, going through coaches Stan Albeck and Doug Collins, when if Jerry Krause had just held on to Kevin Lockery, he and Phil would have been delighted to coach together. So it ended up being a lot of trouble.
Do you think, I mean, you look at over the, Jordan's career, you look at Magic, and Magic always had Bird. Wilt always had Russell. And then today, I mean, there's the Kobe, LeBron was kind of forced at the beginning. We never got a Kobe-LeBron finals. And, LeBron, Durant has potential. Did Jordan ever regret not having a Bird to be Magic or a Russell to be Wilt? Do you think he ever regretted not having, somebody that was on just at his level in the NBA?
Well, he had Clyde Drexler, who was a fabulous athlete. Every bit Michael's measure athletically. But when they all went in, and of course Michael and Scotty, Michael in particular, just really gave the Blazers a pretty good go for it in the 92 NBA Finals. And then Pippen and Jordan went and played on the Dream Team in 92 that summer with Clyde Drexler. And they were sitting on the bus for the Dream Team, having spent a lot of time with Drexler. And of course, the Bulls were a very fundamental team. That team was coached almost like it was a sixth grade team. These players had all these chest passes, all these fundamentals, and Tex Winter, Phil Jackson's assistant coach, really drove the fundamentals. Of course, another thing people don't realize is that Jordan, again, was already a league scoring champion and all this fancy stuff, but again, he had the character. You try to do that for a lot of NBA players today, they just laugh. But they would spend all this time doing these fundamentals, and Tex and Michael fought for years over whether Michael knew how to throw a correct chest pass. But Pippen and Jordan were sitting on that bus with Team USA, and they said, wow, could you imagine how powerful and dominating Clyde Drexler would be if he spent time learning the fundamentals with Tex Winter? And the point in all of this is that Clyde had this marvelous athleticism. You know, there are players for which it is just so easy. They don't have to paint by numbers to get to where they want. And those guys like Drexler and Jordan and Jerry West, they just have this athleticism. You know, in the vernacular of the game, they know how to get their own shots. They don't need people setting screens. They don't need these things that most players need. But the bottom line of the anecdote, yes, Tex Winter was this marvelous coach of the fundamentals. But Michael Jordan, despite his many flaws, had the character to build his game in a way that most pro players would not do. And of course, Michael influenced Scottie Pippen in that regard as well. And Pippen was another of those players who displayed this remarkable character to go along with their intelligence and understanding of the game.
Who, with his drive, who in his family would you say he got his drive and his competitive nature from? Like of his ancestors.
There's a bunch, but I think the real pipeline of rocket fuel came from his mother, and she's whoa. But her father. Now the Jordans were people living down on the coastal plain of North Carolina, his ancestors. But his mother was a Peoples, and her father was not a pleasant guy. He was a real hard ass, like Jordan himself would later be. And nobody, white or black, anybody made a living as a sharecropper. It was a ruinous, failed economic system that destroyed millions of lives. But Michael Jordan's grandfather, his mother's father, won the lottery as a sharecropper. He came to own his own land. He had a big house. Nobody had a big house, a relatively big house. He had all this land. He farmed all the time. He worked full-time at the big lumber company there, a very dangerous, difficult job. He did all his farming, all his lumber work, and he was a big-time moonshiner. The illegal liquor trade was a big part of the culture on the coastal plain in the 30s and 40s. And so if there is that fierce customer, and there on the Jordan side are also a lot of interesting people, but the truly fierce customer that I could find in his background was old man Edward Peoples. He was a tough guy.
As far as, his early career with Lockery and Doug Collins, how did he, he obviously brought Doug Collins back to coach in Washington when he was helping run the Wizards. But,
he was not all that fond of Doug Collins when Doug was at the Bulls. Doug was just such a fiery, almost a maniacal coach, a great coach for a young team, and probably there's never been a better steward of the game than Doug Collins. He's a fabulous broadcaster, but he just has always eaten himself alive as a coach.
Yeah, he's had an odd career as a coach. Like you always, like when he went to Philadelphia, they brought in Bynum, and you felt that was the first time it sounded like he was truly excited for a team, is when they finally brought in Bynum, and then Bynum, he has his injuries and was never truly motivated. And Collins, I don't see him getting coaching again. I think that kind of deflated him. He's had several deflating jobs as a coach. But how does Jordan view the relationship with Collins now?
Right after he'd taken that team to the Eastern Conference, to the conference finals for the first time since the 1970s. And everyone, in the fan base was stunned that he was fired. And Doug Collins is one of the really, truly good guys and good stewards of basketball. But he really was a fired up, too emotional as a coach.
Yes. What was through your research, and interviews with different people, who was the most informative outside Jordan on Jordan's life?
Oh gosh. When you do a book this big, you're sort of have to have guides along the way, people who have intersected at certain points. Sometimes they're called story beacons. And I had a number of them, different people. Michael's Babe Ruth League baseball coach was a story beacon. Eddie Pinckney, who really, intersected Michael's life at key moments in international basketball with the team, what we would call Team USA today. Pinckney was there. He helped a lot. I've had so many over the years. I've had a great friendship with Tex Winter. Just an unbelievable man. And, he would explain so many things to me. He had a stroke in 2009, but I literally had the kind of relationship where I could call him up just about any time and spend hours on the phone with him, and I did that for years. George Mumford, the Bulls team psychologist. Earlier, back in the 90s, Phil Jackson gave me a tremendous amount of inside information, and various people in and around the Bulls organization. Likewise, Jerry Krause, Jordan's nemesis, and Art Chansky. One of the secrets for me, a lot of times you'll have writers that are really close with basketball programs, and Art Chansky was extremely close with the University of North Carolina program. And those people are gold mines because they know all this stuff that they never put in their stories, because they are considered insiders and they don't violate their trust. But years later, when you talk to them, they go ahead and tell you all these marvelous tidbits and provide all this inside information that they never put in their own stories, because Chansky was just very close to the program. But he was a huge help. And I had dozens of people like that at every phase along the trail. Plus, I've been doing this for 30 years. I just got back in Charlotte. I was there last night covering another NBA game. Just some old guy trudging around the NBA talking to people. It's a lifetime.
Who, of Jerry Krause, Phil Jackson, and Michael Jordan, that, and I guess you can throw Scottie Pippen in there too. Of those four, who do you Jordan always talks about how he regrets that they didn't try to, keep going until somebody finally knocked him off. But who do you think regrets that breakup the most of those four?
Well, I think they all do, but probably Jordan the most, because he could have won a couple of championships. He was exhausted. By the way, to your previous question, I have to add Billy Packer, who spent hours with, and he was just such an observer of the golden age of the Atlantic Coast Conference. But back to this current question, let me say that the Bulls basically broke up because Jerry Reinsdorf, the chairman, did not want to pay Scottie Pippen the huge salary he had come to deserve as one of the all-time great players. And it became suddenly this showdown between Krause and Jordan. But the real linchpin of the thing was that the Bulls, who bought the ownership group, bought the Bulls at a fire sale for less than $15 million, and then watched as Jordan and Pippen blew it up into a franchise that was worth, I don't know, it's worth over $1 billion today, I'm sure. But back then it was just raking in huge amounts of cash, made all the investors very wealthy, and yet, sadly, they did not want to pay Scottie Pippen. They were afraid of getting cheated, I guess, at the end. To me, it's absurd. If history has resentment for a figure, it's that Reinsdorf didn't step up and agreed to pay Pippen so that franchise, that great team could go on.
See, I want you till so far away. I know can't walk away from the things you say, the things you say, yeah, the price you pay, the price you pay for them. Can't walk away from the things you say, the things you say, yeah, the price you pay for them. No, no, no. Can't walk away from the things you say, the things you say, yeah, the price you pay for them. Can't walk away from the things you say, the things you say, yeah, the price you pay for them. Can't walk away.
Who the hell can wait till morning? Talk now at latenightsportsradio.com.
You're listening to the Bob Sullivan Show, and now we return you to the second part of Bob's interview with Roland Lazenby, author of Michael Jordan, The Life.
Do you think Jordan has any regret or like towards his public treatment of Jerry Krause, even his daily treatment of Krause? Because he did not. I don't think Krause is probably not the easiest guy to deal with either. But Jordan
and Jerry Krause were very close. And Tex Winter owed Jerry Krause everything because Tex was this really good college coach who, had taken Kansas State to the Final Four in '58, and he'd challenged John Wooden at various times, and it was really one of the early coaches to integrate the game at a public university at Kansas State, and then obviously he had developed a triangle offense, and really been great, but he was sort of retired early, his career had fizzled, and Krause absolutely worshipped Tex Winter, worshipped his triangle system. And so Krause brought Tex back, and Tex is a man who's a real pragmatist. He of course suffered a stroke in 2009, and I speak today to address this, but we talked often about it, and as much as he owed Jerry Krause, he acknowledged that Jerry Krause is a really brusque and difficult man who had been bullied in his own right as a youth. He was this fat, chubby guy trying to impose his will in the world of athletics, and it had been a problem when he was a kid, and it was a problem when he was an adult. A lot of people consider Jerry Krause a laughingstock. The only thing that relieved him that is that Krause was a brilliant scout and a very hard-working one. But even Tex said, and Phil Jackson, Krause loved to be a kingmaker, and the ultimate king he made was Phil Jackson. And Tex always told me that Phil Jackson bent over backwards to accommodate Jerry Krause. But it was just so difficult because his personality was so difficult, so damaged in strange ways that, and he just insisted on challenging Jordan in ways that irritated him and really caused the disintegration of their relationship. It is sort of what it is. Krause worked very hard. He had the vision. He was difficult. Jordan himself was immensely difficult. Also worked very hard. They all did. They had tremendous success, but they left a couple on the table.
My last question. Jordan, is this larger than life kind of guy. And, he has his own brand, he pretty much owns Nike, he created this brand, but he was never a guy like Muhammad Ali, taking stances politically or anything. He never put his 2 cents in. And just recently, athletes, it set a trend of athletes, kind of keeping quiet during political times, and and there wasn't really anything enormous during the 90s that you would really need to speak up about. But now athletes are starting to speak up. How much do you think they copy Jordan in that aspect of, the Jeeters of the world, Kobe, never taking a stand? Do you think they took a page out of Jordan's book and just kind of stepped back and were like, okay, we're gonna let the politics and issues take their course. We're not going to put our 2 cents into it because of Jordan.
Well, my book starts out in the 1890s, and Wilmington, the area where Michael Jordan grew up, in the 1890s, it had about 200,000 black males registered to vote. So Wilmington had a black mayor, it had an integrated police force, it had a growing black business community, but white supremacy, and particularly the Democratic Party back in the day, the Dixiecrats, they weren't called that then, but the white supremacists, and there were many of them. I mean, it was just a standard belief in society. They could not stand the idea that African Americans control their own fate in and around Wilmington, and they had this huge race riot. They had a militia, this white militia called the Red Shirts, and they killed all these people and took all the black leaders and put them on the train in Wilmington and ran them out of town. And they started Jim Crow and took away all the voting rights from all the African American males on the coastal plain. And so where there had been about 120,000, 130,000 black males registered to vote on the coastal plain, suddenly that went down to 3,000 in 1898. By 1940, you were lucky to have a single black male registered to vote in any of the counties and communities around Wilmington. And so the political rights of African Americans were violently taken from them in North Carolina, which is probably America's most racist state. And that's not an opinion, that's sort of based on the fact that they had more Klan members in North Carolina than all of the other southern states combined. And so you're really, one of the things I did in my biography, I went into this background. And African Americans in North Carolina had no thoughts of politics. And this was not just Michael Jordan, this was his family, the culture he came from. Michael's own family was really focused, as I described his grandfather on his mother's side, really focused on economic gain. That was the only thing that they could trust. And that really ended up being a factor in Michael's mother driving him to that deal with Nike. She pushed that. She was the driving force. And so Michael he was a young guy challenged by the game. He wasn't thinking about politics. That wasn't what happened in the culture he came from. Now by age 27, he had matured enough, and he began expressing himself politically. And so it's hard to compare Michael Jordan not just with guys who are younger today, living in a different age. It's hard to compare him even with these iconic figures who came along, iconic athletes. Muhammad Ali, Bill Russell, Jim Brown, the great running back. The list of these guys goes on and on. They stood up to this ugly, racist hatred, dominated and had dominated America for years and years. But it had grown worse in the 20th century. And they stood up to it, and they called it out, and they emboldened a generation of others to stand up to it and say, enough of this crap. And so you can't really compare Michael to those guys because none of those iconic figures really came from North Carolina. Now, Bill Russell's family was from Louisiana, but he grew up in Oakland. And Jim Brown, grew up in New York. And Muhammad Ali, he grew up in Louisville, but he was named Cassius Clay. He was Cassius Clay, by the way, was a abolitionist newspaper editor in Louisville who was attacked by mobs because he favored integration and getting rid of this stupid racist nonsense that has held our country back so long. Anyway, it's a very complex thing in discussing the political leanings of modern athletes. Michael Jordan was not a guy. I say his story is a black power story, but that's because of the economic drive of his mother, and that drive came right off the sharecropping of the coastal plain of North Carolina. Michael Jordan's story is not a black power story in terms of politics or protest or those iconic actions by the great figures I just described. On the other hand, as Michael Matur, he's done his share politically, but he's not a political animal. Most athletes are not. Most of the athletes who are political animals are African Americans, and they've been forced to be that by circumstances that no white, normal, average American today could begin to fathom. The stupid sickness of our culture.
Well, last thing before I let you go. You want to tell everybody where we can find you on Twitter, good places to get the book, Michael Jordan's Life. And I also want to give my stamp of approval. Great Christmas gift. If you're a Jordan fan, if you're a fan of NBA in general, buy this book. Where can we get this book?
It's available in an awful lot of places. It's coming out, and thank you, by the way, for saying that. That's very kind of you, Bob. It's coming out in 7 foreign language editions in the coming months, but it is at bookstores. It's been through 5 or 6 American printings, and it's in bookstores. Pretty much Barnes and Noble has led the charge for it. My publisher's been in a war with Amazon, but even that is finally in.
Thank you all very much for listening. This has been the Bob Sullivan Show on LateNightSportsRadio.com. Catch us tomorrow night at 10 p.m. Eastern Time when the boys from 87sportsfans.com take back to the airwaves after a 2-week layoff. 87 Sports Fans live tomorrow, 10 p.m. Eastern Time at LateNightSportsRadio.com. You can catch this show on demand through iTunes, the Spreaker app, or at LateNightSportsRadio.com at any time.